What's up, everyone? I wanted to, before this, we get into this video, I wanted to give a huge thank you to all those who've subscribed to my channel to this point, crossing 100 subscribers. So I'm grateful for all of you guys. I apologize for the inconsistency in my posting schedule. I know it's been a while since I posted last. I really apologize for that. Life's been happening, but I'm doing the best I can, and I'm hoping to do even more and be even more consistent going forward. But once again, I really appreciate you all for subscribing at this point. It means a lot. Thank you so much. But now let's get to the video. So the Cleveland Cavaliers have been a remarkable story all season long, right? Starting off with that 15-0 start and, having those multiple win streaks throughout the course of the season. They've had a remarkable season. Came really out of nowhere. No one really expected the season that they had to take place. But all that being said, as remarkable as it's been, are they a favorite to win it all? Heck, are they a favorite to even come out of the Eastern Conference? Well, that's what we're going to dive into on this edition of Inside the Lines. We're going to see why it's possible for them to do it, and we're going to go over a list of concerns I may or may not have about their ability to reach the finals, right? Let alone win it all, but we'll discuss that all here in a bit. So let's get to it. So earlier in the season, right, when the Cavaliers were off to that really hot start, that 15-0 start, I made a video detailing the Atkinson effect. Obviously, the Cavaliers came into this season firing their head coach last season, JB Bickerstaff, who's also doing a remarkable job out in Detroit, and I'm definitely going to touch on him at some point as we progress through videos in preparation of the playoffs. But I made a video titled The Atkinson Effect, right? The hiring of head coach Kenny Atkinson and what that had done for this organization to, 14, 13, 15 games into the season, right? And he had this team purring, right? Kenny Atkinson was a guy that came in with the resume of always having a team that was high in pace, always having a team that shot a lot of three-pointers, and always having something to do with the improvement of different players, different big players, shooting threes a little bit more consistently and knocking them down at a more consistent rate, empowering them to shoot the three-pointer, to have the confidence to shoot the three-pointer, which in turn, a lot of the times where he led to their improvement in the three-point percentage, right? Helped spacing the floor even more, right? Kenny prioritized all those things. I talked about how Kenny wanted corner threes, Kenny wanted ball movement, wanted drives, kicks, penetration, passes to the outside on the perimeter to get open shots, open three-pointers. I definitely detailed all of that in my Atkinson Effect video from the beginning of the season. So how has that worked out for the Cavaliers to this point? Well, I'll tell you how. They have been one of the hottest teams in the league, right? They've had multiple double-digit winning streaks. Look at this list here, right? Longest winning streaks of the season. 3 out of 4 of them belong to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Remember that one that I was referencing earlier when they started the season 15-0? There's that one. There's a 16-game win streak from a couple of weeks ago where the Cavaliers were dominant, right? Obviously, you have the 15 straight for OKC. And then another one where they won 12 straight after winning 15 straight to start the year. They are one of the hottest teams in the NBA. They can get hot in a hurry, and they can also sustain, right? So one of the hottest teams in the NBA this season, as they hold 3 of 4 of the hottest win streaks in the NBA. So how have they been doing it, right? They've had a fantastic season. We all know that, right? But when you look at what the Cleveland Cavaliers are very good at, it's number one, they're very good at winning in the clutch, right? They're second in the league in clutch win percentage. And, they were up until last night when they played the Indiana Pacers with a lot of their starters resting, right? Both sides had their starters resting. They were number 1 in clutch win percentage in the NBA, but they were overtaken by the Boston Celtics with that loss that they had last night against the Pacers, right? They lead the NBA, or they're 5th in the NBA in open three-point attempts, right? So remember, Kenny Atkinson, one of the keys to his philosophy is driving, getting the penetration, and kicking it out to open shooters. And the Cavaliers have done that in spades, right? Being top 5 in the NBA and generating open three-point looks, right? They're 9th in the NBA in wide open three-point looks, and they're 1st in percentage, and three-point percentage when their shots are wide open, right? They're 5th in the league in assist to turnover ratio. They're 9th in the league in assists per game, so they're moving the ball, right? This is a team that loves to share the ball, loves to share the wealth, loves to stay in constant motion, right? Guys are always moving off ball, guys are always cutting, flashing to the rim, guys are always flashing to the three-point or flaring out to the three-point line for open shots. They're doing a lot of off-ball movement that's helping their team gain a level of consistency on the offensive side, a dynamic that they didn't particularly do very, very well last season. They were a heavy pick and roll team a season ago, and I think this season changing that philosophy to being more team friendly, ball movement, keeping everybody involved in the offense, I think has worked to their benefit in a tremendous way, right? In addition to that, right, they're 3rd in net rating, so they're also doing it on the defensive side of the ball. They're 2nd in the league in point differential, 7th in corner threes. Now that's important, right? When I take a look at a team and a team's level to sustain success, it's how good are the looks you're getting. Obviously in the paint, you want to get to the rim, you want to finish around the rim, but how good are you doing when you're generating those 3-point looks, right? So to be in the top 10 in the NBA in corner threes generated and 6th in percentage of makes, that's something you really have to focus on when you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers. Can that carry over in the postseason? Can they bring that level of offensive efficiency that they've had all year? I mean, they were the #1 team in points this entire season. Can that carry over into the playoffs? Obviously, we know what they can do against teams that are sub 500, right? This season, they were 36-7 against teams with a losing record, and they were 28-11 against teams that were above 500. So that bodes well for how well they can transition this to the postseason, because their strategy obviously is going to work against bad teams, but it also worked against good teams as well. So I'm curious to see what can carry over, what can transition, what play style. Like, I like the play style that they had. Kenny Atkinson made some comments about playing all 10 in the playoffs, and he's been standing 10 toes on that since day one about wanting to play all 10 in the rotation. We're going 10 deep into the rotation in the playoffs, but what's sustainable? What can we see this Cleveland Cavalier team do going forward that will work for them in the postseason, right? Well, obviously it starts with the head of the snake, the head honcho, the head spider, the leader, Donovan Mitchell, right? What can he provide for this Cavalier team to start the season? Well, I think Donovan Mitchell is one of the key important pieces in making this Cavalier team work, and how he's gotten this team to play as well as they have. I think he's empowered them with the level of unselfishness he's shown to this point, right? Donovan Mitchell is a guy who is getting a career low in minutes to this point. Kenny Atkinson, we heard the story about how Kenny Atkinson sat him down during the offseason and said, hey, look, this is what's going to happen, right? I'm going to reduce your minutes load to make sure that when we get you ready for the postseason, what happened last year is far less likely to happen in terms of injury and you being, worn down to the point where we can't even play you and have a level of effectiveness for you in the postseason. No, that's not happening. I'm going to make sure that you're fresh come playoff time, and he definitely honored that commitment. He's playing the lowest minutes of his career, and he hasn't had a career year by any stretch of the metric with the numbers that he's put up, but the fact that he's even able to step back and even agree to something, a lot of superstars have a little bit more of an ego for Coach Bird to approach him. Not, Coach, I'm going to play all 82. I'm going to play all the minutes. I'm going to make sure my guys are ready and they can follow my lead. And I think sometimes to be a leader, you need to learn when to step back. And I think Donovan has mastered that to a T this season. When you look at how he's empowered the guys, because when we talk about player empowerment, yeah, the coach needs to do that. But when you see the leader of the team, I was recently watching LeBron James and Steve Nash's Mind the Game podcast, and LeBron made a point of saying, look, I played on teams that had no business competing in an NBA Finals, right? But the key, the strategy in how I was able to have success with those teams was to inspire the belief in each and every one of those guys on that team, to make them believe they were better than what they actually were. And I think Donovan Mitchell is doing that exact same thing, right? And maybe not, I don't want to, that's the phrase LeBron used, I don't want to say better than they actually were, but can play to a higher level than they thought was originally possible. And I think he's done an excellent job of doing that to this point. And I think that's evidenced by the development and the growth you're seeing in a guy like Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley, when he was drafted originally, we all knew the defensive potential he had, right? We knew This was a guy that was going to be a premier defender in the NBA, right? His length, his size, his prowess. It was something we all kind of knew coming out of USC, right? But the question with Evan was always based on the offensive side of the ball, right? Can Evan make that leap? We saw that he had a solid mid-range game, could finish around the paint, right? Had a solid form on the jumper, but could he consistently be a threat offensively to really help out the Donovan Mitchells of the world, Darius Garlands of the world, right? Well, to me, this is the season where we saw that perspective leap, right? I mean, look at his career averages, right? 16.4 a game, 9 boards, 2.9 assists. But I want to key in on those on those shooting percentages, right? Shot 31.5% from 3 on 1.8 3-point attempts per game, along with 54.8% from the field on 12 attempts per game. If you juxtapose that to what he's done this year, almost a little over 2-point increase in points per game, right? 18.5 points per game, which is a career high. 9.3 boards per game, increased his boards per game over the course of his career, or is averaging more boards per game this season than he did over the course of his entire career, right? In addition to the fact that he's averaging a little bit more of assist as well, and that's to be expected in my opinion in that Atkinson offense, right? An offense that's more predicated on ball movement, spacing, and on top of that too, another underdeveloped or underrated aspect of how good the Cavaliers has been is that big-to-big passing that Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen had. Remember, there was a lot of questions about whether or not Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, the two big lineup, could work together. They've made it work so far this season, right? Look at that, 37% from 3 on 3.2 attempts per game, right? That's a career high in attempts per game, and his 3-point percentage is higher than his average over the course of his entire career. Definitely something you want to make a note of, in addition to the fact that he's shooting his highest field goal percentage of his career on the most attempts in his career. This is something that really needs to be remarked on, because at the end of the day, I think Evan Mobley's making that leap. Look, this is to me the defensive player of the year. So you've got a guy who's a defensive player of the year candidate, who has great prowess, who can knock down defensively, who can do a good job of making the opposing team's offensive players really think twice when they get in the paint. He can step out on the perimeter and defend as well, and can block shots from anywhere. That is giving you 18.5 points per game, along with 9 boards and 3 assists, while shooting 37% from 3, 55% from the field. This is a guy that to me is maybe the most important player on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like, we know Donovan Mitchell is the best player on the Cleveland Cavaliers, but Evan Mobley, he's the most important. Can this translate, right? Can what he's doing right now in the regular season, can he continue it in the postseason? If he can continue to give you this level of play, giving you a career high in points per game and assists per game, and can continue to knock down the 3 with the level of consistency he has, look out for Cleveland, because then the floor space is even more, which gives them the ability to play that 2-big lineup with Jarrett Allen, right? Evan Mobley, who can still get to the rim, flash to the rim, drive to the rim, handle the ball, and has done a great job handling the ball as well. So I really think Evan Mobley's importance cannot be understated. He's somebody that's going to be very important if the Cleveland Cavaliers are to make it to the NBA Finals this season. Another reason why I think the Cavaliers are where they are and might be an X factor in whether or not they can make it to the finals is a guy named Darius Garland. Darius Garland is bouncing back from the year he had a year ago, right? Remember, he had a broken jaw, lost a ton of weight because he couldn't eat, and he was talking about how his joy for the game was gone, right? I think he also had a death in his family. I think he lost his grandmother as well. A lot that he was dealing with, and he told us at the beginning of the year, before the season started, I got my joy back, right? And that man is showing that he's got his joy back with how he's played. 20 points per game, 47% from the field, 40% from 3, right? All while averaging 6.7 assists per game. So he's still doing a good job of distributing the ball, keeping his teammates involved, all while staying aggressive and scoring the basketball, right? Towards the beginning of the season, I believe he was in the 50, 40, 90 club for quite some time. Then I think he had a hip injury or something in a New York game. And then from then his numbers started to dip. But towards the end of this past season, the past 2 weeks or so, he's been playing at a super high level. Here's why I say he's an X factor and why he's very important. Although he is very sound on the offensive side of the basketball, against a team like Boston that has a ton of size. It's going to be very, very tough for him to get off what he normally gets off in terms of finishes around the rim, getting around defenders, knocking down that three-point shot. The step-back three is going to be something that may or may not be a tool or a weapon for him in that series. But yeah, the offensive side, maybe he plays as well as he needs to. Maybe that's some place they don't really have to worry about. It's the defense side of the ball. Now look, I've watched every single game that Cleveland has played against Boston this year, and when they do try to pick on Darius, when they do try to hunt Darius, he's done a good job of at least putting forth the effort. At the end of the day, his size is definitely something that he's going to have to overcome in the playoffs, but at the same time, I still think he's done a great job. But against a team like Boston, who is going to exploit that to kingdom come, they're going to spam the heck out of it. I have my questions, I have my concerns, I have my doubts about whether or not that will hinder Cleveland's ceiling or level of success that they can experience this postseason if he's going to continue to be one that is hunted. But DG, man, props to him. He's had a phenomenal season. You know, over the course of NBA history, specifically the past, 10 to 11, 12, 15 years, right, we've seen trades go down, right? We've seen teams make moves at the deadline, or maybe not at the deadline, and it may not pay dividends right away, right? But it's a key instrumental piece in a team either breaking through this threshold of getting to an NBA Finals or a team winning it all, right? So, I mean, if you take a look here, right, you have Denver making the trade for Aaron Gordon that eventually helped them capture that championship in 2023. They made that trade for Aaron Gordon in 2021, got Aaron Gordon and Gary Clark, trading away Gary Harris and RJ Hampton in a first-round pick to Orlando, right? You have the Boston Celtics, right? They got Derrick White in exchange for Romeo Langford, Josh Richardson, and a 2022 first-round pick. First of all, Tim, sorry, just reading that out loud, that is robbery. They got Derrick White for effectively nothing. I don't know where Romeo Langford is. I'm trying to be respectful here. These are NBA players. The level of athleticism and athletic achievements they have is not to be disrespected, right? But Romeo Langford, I don't think he's in the NBA right now, right? Another guy you have is Josh Richardson. I'm not sure where he is at the moment in a 2022 first-round pick to get a guy that was, to me, instrumental in them winning the championship, right? So why am I bringing up those two trades? Well, the Cleveland Cavaliers made a trade this past trade deadline for a guy by the name of DeAndre Hunter, who to me is going to be huge. You talk about Darius Garland being an X factor. This guy is an X factor. They got DeAndre Hunter from the Atlanta Hawks in exchange for Karis LeVert, George Niang, and 3 second-round picks and 2 pick swaps, right? DeAndre Hunter is key for the Cleveland Cavaliers' success in the postseason this year. I cannot understate how key he will be for this team. His size alone is something that, to me, will be significant in itself, right? You're talking about a guy that is 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan, right? Like, obviously we talked about this when he was traded to Cleveland at the deadline. That size to defend a Jason Tatum, to defend a Jaylen Brown, in addition to the fact that this guy, when he played in Atlanta before he got traded to Cleveland, was averaging about 19 points per game. He finished the season averaging 17 points per game. In Cleveland, he averaged 14.3 points per game, off 48% shooting from the field and 42.6, about 43% from three. So you got a guy shooting the three at 43% clip. You got a guy who can knock down the open three, get to the rim, finish around the rim, and also he gets fouled a lot. For a guy who can put the ball on the floor, gets to the basket, he gets fouled a lot. Oh, by the way, he can play defense, right? He can guard Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum's numbers have not been all that impressive when guarded by him. In fact, in that game Cleveland had played, the last game Cleveland played against Boston, where Boston got off to that really hot start and Cleveland had come back and won that game, late in the fourth, or as we progressed towards the end of the game, one of the biggest keys or adjustments Atkinson had made was making sure that that switch that Boston was hunting for Darius Garland, that they shut it down, right? So when those picks came, DeAndre Hunter fought through those screens to make sure that he stayed in front of those guys. And I think when it comes down to it, DeAndre Hunter's level of importance on the defensive side of the ball, as well as what he can provide to you offensively, because look, Isaac Okoro is a very solid player, but he cannot hit the three consistently, and he's undersized to guard a guy like Jason Tatum. Max Strus, for as good as he plays, he's a heady guy. He makes good decisions with the basketball, although at times maybe he passes a little too much. What he can give you on the three-point side of the what he can give you with that three-point shot, in addition to the fact that he competes defensively, is something that can be understated, but he's also undersized. You need a guy on the wing like a DeAndre Hunter, who can really make things difficult for a Jason Tatum and a Jaylen Brown, and can at times even play backup 4 if you want to go small and play Mobley at the 5. I think his importance is so important. I know I kind of played on my words there, but his level of importance is going to be key in a series against Boston. So I'm very curious and eager to see what it looks like for Cleveland in the postseason. They currently have Max Strus starting, and I don't think that's a bad idea. However, when a series against Boston, if and when it were to come, he needs to start. I think Kenny noticed that and learned that the hard way when Boston got off to that 25-3 start in Boston when they played Cleveland in that last matchup they had before the end of the regular season. I think DeAndre Hunter has to start in a series every game against Boston. And I also wanted to show love to his college teammate. Look, these are two guys that to me are up for Sixth Man of the Year. Look, Ty Jerome, a great story in the NBA. Nobody, we talk about the Cavaliers, nobody saw him coming, right? This is a guy that's averaging 12.5 points per game, 51% from the field, 43.9% from 3. Let me tell you something about Ty Jerome if you don't watch him play basketball. He has one of the best deceleration floater games I've ever seen, right? His ability to have that body control, slow his pace down, float the ball up, and always have it cash net, I think is something that is so underrated. In addition to how smart he is on the floor, he makes good decisions, he passes the ball well, and he shoots the 3. And when he gets on a heater, look out. You want to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers depth, you got to look no further than their backup point guard, Ty Jerome, who I think is going to be very key and may end up winning the Cavs a game or 2 in the playoffs this season. So got to show some love to these two Virginia Cavaliers Sixth Man of the Year candidates. So all in all, this Cleveland Cavalier team, can they win it all? Will they win it all? I definitely have my doubts and concerns, right? I have concerns about their size in the backcourt, more so with Garland, as I mentioned before. How are they going to address that? Will that be able to be overcome when the time comes against playing a team like Boston or a team the size, right? Just how good will Donovan be, right? Look, Donovan has raised his level of play to high degrees in the postseason before, but we've also seen the lows. We've seen the New York series. We've seen the Dallas series when he was out in Utah. What Donovan Mitchell are we getting this postseason? Will he be a guy that can lead this team and be a consistent scorer, a consistent presence on the court, and elevate his level of play to whatever this team may need in the postseason? So that's another question I have. Will Evan Mobley's leap translate, right? Will he do what he did the regular season in the postseason? That's a question I have, and something I am super eager to see how it plays out in the postseason. And last but not least, will experience come into play if and when they play Boston in the conference finals? Look, Boston is battle tested. We've seen some terrible losses from Boston, giving up a 3-0 lead. No, not giving up 3-0, going down 3-0 to an 8th seeded Jimmy Butler team. We've seen them lose time and time again. We've seen them lose in the finals to a team in Golden State that I felt like at the time was less talented than they were, right? We've seen so many instances of Boston coming up short, but I think those shortcomings for Boston that inspired doubt in me picking them a year ago are why they are the way that they are now, why they're a well-oiled machine, why they trust each other to the degree that they do. I think that experience that they have, how much is it going to come into play against a young team with very little conference final, if any at all, experience? No, I don't think anybody's played the conference final. Oh, no. DeAndre Hunter and Max Strus has very little conference final experience. How is that going to play? Right, I have my doubts on that. All in all, I'm still leaning Boston personally, right? I am open to picking the Cavaliers to potentially upset the Celtics, right? But I do think the Celtics' size and experience is something I do give them respect for, more so than the Cavaliers. But we'll see. I definitely think it's going 7 games. And if that happens, game 7 will be in Cleveland where anything can happen. All bets are off, right? So we'll see. But that's all I got for you guys this time. Once again, I thank you guys for subscribing. I thank you guys for sticking with me watching this video. Look, playoff time is here. It's postseason time. Get ready to watch some postseason basketball. We got the play-in game starting, I believe, on Tuesday first. We get those out the way, and then we get to the playoffs on Saturday. But that'll do it for this edition of Inside the Lines. Appreciate you guys for listening, watching. Please continue to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. But until next time, we hope you keep it inside the lines.